People don't trust salespeople, just generally speaking. It's an uphill battle that we constantly have to climb. From the moment that you have that first conversation with them, you have to figure out a way to demonstrate credibility and demonstrate transparency and get them to overcome this natural just caution that they have to trust somebody.
Welcome to Onboarding Therapy. I'm Kim, and today Sherelle and I are sitting down with Grant Jones, Arrow's head of sales. We're having an honest chat about the tension that can come up between sales and onboarding, why blaming sales doesn't help, and how working together makes everything better for us and our customers. Let's get into it. So Sherelle is our head of customer experience. Grant is our head of sales. I'm head of operations. So we have three different kind of departments here, but we are a small early stage startup, so we work together very closely. So we're all more aware of each other's day-to-days and the work and stuff that we're doing than a lot of bigger teams. But it's perfect timing because Sherelle and Grant just got off of a call together with a prospective customer that is in the sales pipeline right now, and would love to hear maybe Grant share what drew you to even bring Sherelle into that call or what came up during the sales conversation. And then I think we can get into how sales generally works onboarding and thinks about onboarding.
Yeah, totally. So for this particular deal, I brought in Sherelle, or I asked Sherelle to join just because in this case, we're selling an onboarding product to them. And so these are onboarding people who put a lot of value on onboarding. And so they had a lot of questions about how our onboarding worked just generally and what to expect. And in their case, they had been burned by other companies in the past and signed up for them expecting one thing that we're not, officially committed to in agreements in terms of support and that sort of thing. And it's a medium-sized deal for us. So not something that we would enter into like custom SLAs for, but wanted to make sure that they felt very confident and were talking to the person that they're going to be working with post-sale and being able to hear directly from Sherelle, just because, as you guys know, sales reps have a bad reputation of overselling things, especially when it comes to here's what our team is going to do for you. So yeah, I asked Sherelle to come and it was super valuable to have him there. I don't think, Sherelle, that you said anything that I would have said differently, but just hearing it come directly from you was a huge value add. And Sherelle offered to even meet with them tomorrow because we have them in a small trial. So he's going to meet with them even without me. And then maybe you'll say some things that I wouldn't say.
I'll tell them the truth tomorrow. Don't worry.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate being pulled into those things, not just in our case for a number of reasons. One, because I'll be also potentially working with these people and it just gives me a leg up on starting to build some of that relationship and having some of that insight. But I think also what we see very often is in marketing, really wine and dine people, and sales, we really wine and dine people, and we're very hands-on and we're very professional, not we Arrows, but we, the general population. And then it does often feel like you're thrown over this finish line where all the buzz and excitement wears off and it's good luck. You might be talking to Sherelle, you might not be. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. We don't know exactly what the next steps look like, which is part of the premise of Arrow's, the onboarding plans in the first place, like having that customer facing extension of what's next. But in this example that we just got off of, or with this prospect we just got off of, it was like bringing that what's next slide that's often in a sales deck to life. And I think it really landed well with them. To Grant's point, to the point where they're going to actually trial it and start building it. And in that moment, I was also able to make an audible and say, why don't we just do it together? If you're about to go into our product and build an example that you're going to use as a business case for your CEO on Friday, we want to be involved in that thing. So having the luxury to just pull up my calendar really quickly and not have to go back and forth was also really nice.
And you're taking steps out of your onboarding process. Like the steps that you are walking them through right now are steps that you would be walking them through post-sale. So if it is adding value and helping to get them to trust us as a business, you're doing extra work, sure, but it's work that would be done post-sale anyway.
And I feel like I'm potentially speeding up activation because now it's going to be their real account. Well, it's a trial, but we'll turn it into a real account when they're ready. And now we are one step closer to you having something that's usable and we can launch. And you already have some buy-in from your internal teams on this concept. So it really is advantageous to me and my day job too, where possible, to offer that kind of help.
It is interesting though, because this I do feel like is one of my responsibilities in sales is to protect your time, because you, and I think most CS people are generally like this, are just overly giving.
Yeah,
I'll absolutely jump on calls with you. I'll absolutely do all of these things. And these are people who have not even paid yet. And so I feel like part of my responsibility is to be like, hey, I'm gating Sherelle from you. I don't want you to access Sherelle. I will bring him into a call so that you can meet him and you can get to know him. And in this case, I think it'll be fine. But I do feel that is a responsibility of mine to make sure that I'm either not letting them request meetings with you before they've paid, and also not letting you offer it because I can't be like, actually.
Yeah, that's fair. And then I can't complain to Kim about not having enough time for anything and how my calendar's always full.
In this case, for me, I'm usually the one who's doing those trial kickoffs. And I'm very upfront. Okay, I am not Sherelle. I'm going to get you to a point where you can validate some of the product expectations that you have, the things you've seen in demos. But I'm not going to help you actually set up like your proper full-on templates and be able to start using this tool to its full capacity. This is literally a 7-day trial just meant to validate what you've seen so that you feel confident enough in the product that you can move forward. And so usually I'm doing those trial kickoffs. So on the one hand, I'm like, awesome, Sherelle wants to do this. That frees me up to do some of these other calls that I have to do. But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't want that to become a thing where you're often entering deals before they're closed and putting in a lot of effort. Joining a call to talk through it, I'm all for that. And I should invite you more often because I think it is a big enough value add that it would push people to close more often than not.
You say that now until I get in there and start telling them they were oversold and they don't need all these premium features and that we can start on the entry level tier.
That's the other fear that I just keep to myself.
I will say from the customer's perspective, I had a call with a potential vendor earlier this morning, and we have been burned in the past where we've had a really excellent sales process and then it's night and day once we sign or pay. We've actually had multiple experiences like that. And so when I'm on sales calls now as a prospective customer, I have so much skepticism about what the sales rep is telling me. So just from my perspective, having someone who is not in sales, from like someone that we would actually be working with, whether it's on our team, it's just you, Sherelle, right now. So it literally is you are the person. But even just having another person coming in to, like validate, especially for larger deals, when there is that hesitation from people who have been burned in the past, it really makes such a difference to be like, okay, it's not just one person. This other person is coming in telling me the exact same thing. This is clearly not like scripted. They stand by what they're saying. And it just gives a lot more confidence to making the decision to move forward and not being like overly sold.
Yeah, we talk about a lot in sales, just in general, the idea of multi-threading. And I think it does go both ways. Most people focus on just like threading into multiple contacts and roles and stakeholders at the prospect, the buying company. But I think there's a ton of value in having it go both ways and having them be connected with multiple people on our team, because it does just add extra confidence that what I'm being sold is what I am going to get when multiple people, like you say, are sharing the same sort of thing. Ton of value to that.
I think it's extra true in our case, like at Arrow specifically, because Kim and I also have our face on a lot of the content and the videos and the YouTube stuff that's out in the world. And I get this reaction a lot on kickoff calls with customers, and they'll be like, oh, you're the guy from those videos. I watched this thing that you and Kim talked about. And so I think it also, when you then, not that we're like special in any sort of way, but then when you talk to us, it does validate that, they are putting out this content and they know what they're talking about. And they're the people that are going to help me through this process now. And I feel a lot more comforted that maybe Grant shared all these marketing resources with me, and it is a real set of people behind here that are going to now really take me over that finish line. And I agree, like with what you said, to a fault at times, I can offer more time than I probably should to folks, but that is coming from the lens of like really fostering that environment of, you weren't just marketed to and sold to. This is your experience through the rest of your journey with us.
Yeah. It's interesting. There have been a handful of deals that I've had over the past year or so where one of the big drivers is wanting to work with you because of all the content that people have engaged with. I love the videos that I've seen of Sherelle. Will I be able to work with him? Is there any way you guys could set me up with him? And of course, the answer is yes. But it does.
It's the only answer around here.
Yeah, the Sherelle, the head, shoulders, knees, and toes of CS at Arrows. You'll get him. No, it does bring up an interesting point. I wonder how applicable that would be to other companies to have your CS leader or CS people, the people that they would actually be working with, be in marketing more publicly, more visibly. Like, it makes sense at Arrows. It's very easy to do because we are in an onboarding space. But yeah, I wonder how well that would translate.
It did come up actually at one of my previous employer at Sprout Social. I wasn't like the customer facing bit of it. I was more on the operations and program side of it. But every now and again, I would be pulled into with the CS leaders or CS like onboarding team managers to also talk about not just the tasks you're completing, but the thought behind how onboarding works at our business and the philosophy of how we really do internally collaborate and make sure that experiences felt through any of the pathways of onboarding. It was valuable then too. And now I see it in a different lens. But I think generally, the more opportunities you give people to be connected to you on a personal level, I think just increases the likelihood that you get a chance to activate them. It doesn't guarantee any of that. Just because we're nice people doesn't mean you're going to use the product and activate on it, but it gives you a chance to build that relationship to then build on that and train them and educate them and get some more honest conversation.
I think part of the thing about people wanting to work with Sherelle too, obviously he is in our videos and very visible at Arrows, which is great. And it's also a big piece of it is a thing that I am very opinionated on, which is having customer success people be subject matter experts. And so I think that is the big thing too, is Sherelle he is an onboarding expert. There aren't that many people who know onboarding so well and have worked in onboarding for 10 or whatever years, a long time. And so I think there is also so much value, and Sherelle adds so much value to our customers on these calls because he's not just like a person that knows our product and has learned our product and has learned like how customers use it. He has been in their shoes and can relate. And this is where onboarding therapy started, but it can relate on, these are the general problems I'm facing as an onboarding manager, whether or not they relate to Arrows. And so that's why you can connect with people and actually help them. And that's why they want to talk to you, is because they're like, oh, this is a person who gets me beyond just like helping me set up this tool. They understand my goals, they understand my problems, they understand my day-to-day on a deeper level than just being like trained up on it when you join a company.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I have gotten comfortable with and take for granted. And I could actually sell it even better. When it comes up naturally in conversations, I always mention, like, by the way, Sherelle's going to be very valuable beyond just onboarding you to Arrows because he has all of this experience. Prior to even joining Arrows, he has 10 years experience building the things that you're trying to accomplish with Arrows. But that's something that I could sell more proactively better, I think.
So I jump in for demos occasionally, and I'm always surprised how much people ask about what happens post-sale, like what the experience is like, what kind of onboarding they get, and what that looks like on the first call. That is a main question that people are asking and are evaluating in their decision-making process, almost to the extent that they are evaluating the product. So Grant, if you can speak to how you think about laying out the onboarding process beyond just Sherelle. Let's say we had a team of CSMs. What does the onboarding process, what kind of value does that add to you to be able to leverage that in the sales process?
Yeah, tons. I think you alluded to this earlier, but for better or worse, we're at the mercy of just the general perception of sales. People don't trust salespeople, just generally speaking. Like, it's an uphill battle that we constantly have to climb. Like, from the moment that you have that first conversation with them, like, you have to figure out a way to demonstrate credibility and demonstrate transparency and get them to overcome this natural just caution that they have to trust somebody. And I think it gives salespeople a unique opportunity to separate themselves when you can be very explicit and very transparent about, here's exactly what's going to happen. In fact, I didn't even build this process. I'm just showing it to you. So we use Arrow's plans, of course, to actually do the onboarding where it outlines all of the tasks. And I can just show that to them earlier on in the sales process. Here's what's going to happen. Very obviously, you're going to pay for Arrows is going to be step one. Immediately, you're going to schedule your kickoff call. And then I can show them the other phases where they're going to be configuring different things and doing training and that sort of thing. And it definitely adds a level of, I'm going to be taken care of. And I'm not just going to be thrown over the fence. And I'm crossing my fingers that this thing gets set up and awesome. People have had such bad experience that it gives us a unique opportunity to demonstrate that this is going to be a great experience. And the better we can sell that and prove that, then makes the sale a lot easier.
I think it's that final checkbox of what is my gut telling me about these people? Because usually by that point, for the most part, if you're that far into a demo, you know that the product's likely going to solve for what you're trying to do. You've normally signed off on the technical bits if you're installing a product. You've verified a lot of that stuff. And it's that last little hiccup of, I don't know, there's this feeling I have, and I want some of that validated. And to me, that feeling is normally validated by human connection and being able to be like, well, yeah, if you've enjoyed the experience so far with me, this is what it will continue looking and feeling like. And I imagine as a sales rep, that must feel comforting to know that you're handing people off to a place where they're going to get decent service, and good support along the way. And from this side, it feels the same, knowing that, like, I never actually worry about you overselling things. I joke about it, but I've listened to your demos. I can see the customers coming up. There's actually a lot of transparent conversation leading into onboarding, which then makes my life so much easier to go in and just verify what you said and show them how and why they would use it. And then the other thing that I've seen way too often that I don't think is smart is it's easy to throw the salesperson under the bus when you run into something that didn't go well. Because in that moment, you're probably frustrated. You're like, God, this product just doesn't work this way. Why would he say this, or why would she sell it that way? But that maybe makes you feel better in that moment. But now you have built more distrust in that person, in that client, that newly acquired customer. And it I don't know. It just makes it so much harder going forward from there. Now they're always going to think, what else was I lied to about or misled about or expectations were misset? It starts to put weird thoughts in your head about potentially growing or expanding your business with that team. So even in the rare events where someone says, oh, Grant said this, and I just think there's no way that's how that works, nor do I think Grant actually said that. In that moment, I'm not like, oh yeah, Grant's dumb. I can't believe he said that to you. I'll usually just say, that's interesting. I'll check with him to see if he meant something different, or I can look into that and get you a more clear answer because maybe I misunderstand it. So acknowledging those moments too, to protect that customer experience, I think is critical to building a better cycle management of customers. And then internally go talk to Grant. Did you say that? You've seen me do this a lot. I'll message you and be like, hey, this customer thinks this. Is that actually what you said? Sometimes you'll say no. Sometimes you'll say, this is how I said it. But my point is, like, protect the integrity of your team to that customer or to that experience that they're about to go on.
This is not a topic that we have talked about talking about, but maybe take your Arrows experience out of it and go on past experience. So let's say there's a scenario where we have a new customer and 2 months after they close, they churn or say they're going to cancel. So I've been in sales and onboarding, so I can anticipate the kind of reaction from both teams a little bit. There's some level of onboarding being like, this customer is never a good fit. They should have never been sold. We've all run into that experience at some point. And on the sales side, it's like they were onboarded properly. So I feel like that situation is such a tough thing that just happens at companies. I think ultimately it's probably some bit of a little bit of everyone's fault and potentially no one's fault. But I'm curious if you guys have specific thoughts on the topic generally of like how that feels on both sides.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's very annoying. Yeah.
Generally. Yeah, generally it sucks. Thinking it especially sucks if you're a salesperson, if you have a clawback, which most do. That's like the big thing is I put in all this work to sell this deal. And then if I genuinely believe like this is someone who should be successful using it, why were they not? Then yeah, that definitely feels like I did all this work and the onboarding team dropped the ball and now I'm getting money taken out of my pocket. Sucks. There definitely are times though where I think this could work, but it's those ones, maybe it's a little more like you've got to have a good relationship internally to the onboarding person to be able to be like, hey, I think this can work. This is why I'm skeptical. How can I help you make sure this is successful? Because obviously I want them to be successful too, but it requires a good internal relationship to do that.
Yeah, it sucks, especially in like more high volume onboarding worlds where you're just going through customers. And it sucks in that reason because one, you're frustrated now that you potentially spent time on something that might affect your targets or might impact your targets. But also you likely can't give that person the right amount of attention because you're so jam-packed with new calls and other customers that you're helping. And so they churn. That part sucks. The clawback happens. Now the sales rep is frustrated. And if you in that onboarding world or in that onboarding seat are in that mentality of that person just sucks or I'm frustrated with that and don't give any feedback, then it's also going to just keep happening over and over again. And that's where it's really easy to get mad at the sales rep, which fine, be mad at the sales rep. But
we can take it.
First of all, everyone makes mistakes, right? You might have just said the wrong thing or you might have had an off day, or it might not be your fault at all. You could say the exact words and read the exact script and someone might just receive it differently. And we've seen this happen where, oh, I thought Arrows could do this. And no, it can't. And Grant didn't say that, and I didn't say that. And none of our marketing says that. You just thought wrong. And
it's just you make an assumption. We all do it. Oh, when you said this, I assumed it meant this. And so I never even thought to ask the deeper question to make sure.
Right. But if Grant kept missetting the same expectation over and over again, and I keep seeing it and not doing anything about it, then that's my problem ultimately to have to deal with. But if Grant keeps saying Arrows does XYZ and it just simply doesn't, and if I'm not talking to him about it or addressing that, then why or how would he learn to potentially change that? Or if I'm just getting mad and internalizing that and being frustrated, which again, you have the right to do, but that is where you can be a better partner to your teams and build that relationship. And if you have enough data, it might make the conversation a little less confrontational. I'm not trying to say, hey, Grant, you suck at sales. What I'm trying to say is this happened twice. Is it because you're saying it this way, or is it because they're misunderstanding it? Or do we even touch on this part in the demo? Yes or no? And I think that enough of those moments, if you catch enough of those, we talk about doing every step a little bit more proactively. So if in onboarding, you see the same misexpectation over and over again, maybe it's an opportunity to talk to the sales team about, are we saying it this way? And then maybe sales is just saying it that way because it's being marketed that way. And none of this is pointing fingers, although it feels like it. What it really should be is we're trying to improve this customer experience and we keep running into this thing. And now it's actually affecting all of our targets and revenue and customer retention. can we figure out where it's breaking or where in that process the gap is happening, right?
Yeah, I feel like one of the big things, and it's super obvious in small companies like we are, and it can get swept under the rug a little bit more or a little bit more hidden in big companies, but it's like the way that you have those conversations have to be had for sure. If I think that you're doing something wrong, the conversation has to be had in all directions. And it's like when you're able to present the data and say, "Hey, I think that we need to change the way something is happening for the sake of the team." It's that mentality that works. When it's you're screwing me over, you're passing me bad deals, and it's making my number look bad, that's when it's not helpful and not productive. But when it's like, hey, we have this team goal, we need to get there. This is where it's challenging, and this is an idea that I have to help whatever in the sales process or in the post-sale process, then it's like a productive conversation. But so much of it is just psychological and not even necessarily in the way that you present, but the way that you individually think. Like, I'm thinking about the team goals and the company goals, and that's how I'm approaching you with this, not you're making me look bad. That's not it.
Yeah. And make it about the customer. Like, I agree with all that. And ultimately, who's going to suffer the most is our customer. Like, I actually I say this verbatim to our customers because I mean it in the context of Arrows, the product. But ultimately, they don't care what me and you or Kim are doing behind the scenes. They don't, nor should they care. They don't care what property you filled out or if I like your notes or not, or if you like my handoff email or not. That's for us to figure out internally, not for them to have to think or worry about. And the more that they get exposed to it, and that's why we say protect the customer experience, because those internal friction points ultimately impact them. It might mean they get their onboarding plan a couple of days later. It might mean they end up getting misinformed on how something works that they were planning to do, and now they're setting up and have wasted time. So all of that ultimately impacts their experience. Yes, churn is the most clear outcome of it, but along the way is little internal frustrations that build. It's mistrust in the product. It's mistrust in sales. It's just not a good overall experience. And that could be the thing that then causes them to not refer one of their people over to you or expand with you. So yeah, it's frustrating to Kim's question, and it happens all the time, and it's just probably going to keep happening. We are all humans. Everyone is trying to hit their targets and hit their numbers and do their bits, but have some accountability when it does happen and try to reach out to your counterparts and try to have those conversations before it feels like so frustrating that you don't even want to address it.
What's your take on full cycle rep, someone who sells and then onboards, success, contact throughout the whole life cycle?
I've never actually been in a world where that's the case. So I don't know if I have a strong opinion one way or another. I don't think it's a bad thing as long as that person knows how to sell and knows how to onboard and knows how to support a customer. It sounds wildly hard and busy and hard to manage all of that. I wouldn't want to do it.
I did that at my last company. I was in sales, and sales reps were responsible for onboarding customers. And so we would get them onboarded, and then we would hand them off to customer support. And that's why I started an onboarding department, because it was a Series A company, and we were, as with any company, like new business was the entire focus. And so the metrics that we were tied to as a sales team was closing deals, but we also got clawbacks if customers churned. And so we had to onboard them, but we weren't really we were incentivized by the clawbacks, but it was just such mixed messages in terms of where we should be spending our time. Because at that time we were cold calling, we were generating our own business and holding demos and onboarding customers. And we were responsible for a fairly high volume. And it just became clear. I was doing that for a year. They had been decent sized sales team for a year prior. And at the end of that first year, it was just clear that you can't continue. And it's a very different skill set to be in sales versus in onboarding. I luckily, I had been in sales most of my career and had been spending most of my career trying to get out of sales. So for me, it was the perfect opportunity to be oh, I just learned what onboarding is because I have to do that as a part of my sales role. And so I can start up this new onboarding department and kind of get sales reps to focus on their goals of closing business. And then I can onboard the new customers. And it was just me onboarding all of the sales team's customers for a while. And then we ended up bringing on more team members. But I think the incentives don't match. I think it's a great thing for a very early stage company to do, to have you sell and onboard the first customers to get the experience and understand what customers are going through. And I think it's not bad to have salespeople experience what it's like to actually get a customer onboarded to the company, but I just think it's a different skill set. And true salespeople, you don't want onboarding your customers, and onboarding people are not going to be good at selling your customers. So I just think it doesn't actually make sense.
Yeah.
I feel like there's different character types that end up in those roles, and their
Totally.
strengths are not one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like it's just different problems that are being solved. Like the problem that I'm trying to figure out how to solve is how to demonstrate value, like that you haven't yet gotten, but that you will get. It's like a very unique problem compared to what you're trying to do in onboarding scenario, which is like ultimate actual outcomes, like achieving those outcomes and taking into account all of the nuances of their business and their current processes and the challenges that they have. I think it's just a different set of problems that require slightly different skill set. So I appreciate the way that we have it set up now. Or basically, like if any money discussion comes up, you could just throw it back over to me. And they already know me because I sold them the original deal. So we have a level of relationship and it feels natural enough. And I don't think it feels like jolty. Is that a word to them?
We make up words here all the time.
You know what I mean?
At least I do.
Grant, have you felt across your sales career that there's a lot of blame on sales reps? Do you feel that generally?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a lot of blame, but there is always going to be, Arrows is probably the place where I felt it the absolute least, but there's always going to be some level of sales shouldn't have sold this deal. And unfortunately, a lot of orgs, it's like you've got this pressure put on you by quotas and other things that are like, I'm trying to find any way that I can to close business because that's what I'm being asked to do. But then when I do, it's, you didn't sell a perfect deal.
Yeah.
That can be a super frustrating position to be in. And I think it's always present. You just got to try to minimize it as much as you can with the right incentives and just the right relationships between orgs to where you can just talk about things openly and not feel like it's a blame game. One of the funny things that sometimes happens, I think, is people generally are adverse to being sold to, and they don't want to feel like they're being sold to. And I think my selling style is very not pressure, not salesy in like the traditional sense. And so I try to be super upfront with people about what it's designed for and what it's not and why I think this would be a good use case. There have been several occasions where like we're doing the discovery and they're describing their challenges and what they're trying to do. And I'll going into my now pitch of Arrows and the demo that I'm going to provide on that same first call, say, I'll be honest, I don't think Arrows is likely a good fit for you, or I don't think it's the best option in the market for you. And something psychologically, people are like, no, but I already thought it was when I saw your stuff. And so I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
And then they really want it. And it's this sort of psychological thing that happens. And in some cases, I'm like, great. Yeah, you're selling yourself, which is what I want. And then in other cases, I'm like, no, I genuinely think that you are not going to be successful with this. And some people just want to get it anyway. And who am I to stand in their way? And maybe they'll find a way to make it work, but it doesn't make it an awesome experience for the onboarding team.
But even when that has happened here, you at least leave a little note inside of the CRM notes where you're like, they're trying to do this with it. And I let them know this isn't the greatest application. So at least you're aware of it and then trying to give a heads up, which is often what the onboarding rep really, that frustration that we were chatting about earlier with Kim's question. I think it really is just frustrating because you feel like you're being blindsided or caught off guard. Whereas if I know, and you do a good job of this, you'll say, yeah, they bought this product, but their main use case is this, or we talked about this use case and they know this isn't a thing, but it still might come up in the conversation. So you're at least prepping me with that info. And then inevitably when it does, I just double down on what you said. And again, it actually makes it feel like it makes them, I think, feel like, yeah, well, internally they're talking. And I'm always referring to, I read Grant's notes, I watched the demo clips, I did the things that Grant shared to again, make them feel heard and valued and that the things they said were confirmed, and to double down on things that you have called out of. Yeah, no, he wasn't getting it. Can't do this thing, or you're going to run into challenges with this bit. But it's when you're in that grind, and to your point, everyone's got metrics and the monthly goals that they're trying to hit, and everything's fast paced. And now you run into that in real time. It's just frustrating. It's easy to blame the sales rep or blame the onboarding rep, but find a way to talk through it.
Yes.
I appreciate that with you for sure. Just having a quick Slack or quick heads up on things.
So much of it just has to do with the like incentives and the pressure that's applied. Like when you start to get desperate, then you start doing things that are going to not be awesome for the next person down the line. In sales case, it's onboarding. In onboarding case, it's CA.
Yeah, I think that's what I was getting at with when I asked if you feel like people get upset at sales or if you've had that experience. So a couple jobs ago, I was not selling software. I was selling trade show exhibits that we had to produce. It was a big lift for our team. So I would sell something. And then it was like, everyone was like, I'm so excited. I'm helping our business hit our financial goals. I just closed this huge deal. And then everyone's like, okay, Now we have to go do it. And it was so frustrating to me because I'm like, guys, this is the whole reason we have a business. If I didn't sell this, we don't have a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I totally get it. So I had a lot of that experience as a seller, and it was always really frustrating because like me and the CEO would be like celebrating, hey, we just got this big deal, and everyone else was like pissed. And then when I went into onboarding, I feel like I had the seller's perspective, and I was like super trying to make sure. There was a lot of times where literally people were selling, especially new sales reps, were selling a completely different product, truly. It was wild. And I was like very much trying to educate and help. Let's figure out where things went wrong and let me show you how our product actually works, that kind of a thing. And then when I hired someone who hadn't had the experience of being a seller and having that pressure and experiencing what it's like to have the post-sale team be annoyed at you, it was a really interesting perspective because it was a lot of me having to talk them down of hating the sales team for giving them problems. And it's inevitable. Again, back to what we keep saying is some of it sometimes can be things that the sales team could do better. And some of it is just like people perceiving things wrong, people making assumptions about the product, or just not asking questions and not realizing. And it's a super honest mistake. And I think it's just so easy to say salespeople get commission, salespeople get a flexible schedule, whatever the kind of thing is, and being frustrated as like an onboarding or CS person at the sales reps. And I get it. It's frustrating, especially like the end of month deals and the weird kind of stuff that gets thrown at the onboarding team. I 100% get it. It is frustrating. And sales teams are under a ton of pressure. And if you have no sales, you have no job as an onboarding person. So I just think there's a lot of empathy that needs to be had across both teams to understand the position that both teams are in. And both teams are making it harder for each other, and nothing works without each other. Like it just has to be a thing that works together, and you have to understand where the other team member's coming from. And I think without that, it's so easy to have contention between the teams, I think.
Yeah, what you really need to do is have everybody switch for a month.
Yeah.
And
But
then
yeah. Do you guys want to do that?
terrible for the business, I think,
For the
but
business.
great for camaraderie and like being able to work together.
Yeah.
I love that you said that though, Kim, because I've definitely heard that, and I've thought that too in past worlds of like, why is that rep getting paid so much to sell this shit? And now I have to clean up the mess. And it's, wow, put yourself in their shoes for a split second. Their job is really hard. It is a grind. It's transactional. They don't get the friendly conversations you get on those onboarding calls where they're already excited to be here. So it is a very difficult job. And I do think more onboarding reps and everyone should do a few sales calls, do a few demos, at least listen to them to see what those folks are going through, because it's easy to hold and have feelings of frustration because of that. And then they're compounded because now you're also bringing money into it and you think you're doing the same job, and it's just not the same job. It's very different. It's very hard. Go try it. If you really want to be a Go sales rep, go try it. And I promise you, if your characters are more suited towards onboarding, you're not going to enjoy doing sales, and it's going to be a difficult world.
I think that's the thing is people who do onboarding and customer success are also customer facing, and they're thinking, I'm showing my customers value all the time. How hard is sales? What you realize quickly is when you get into those demos, it's a lot more than just showing people how cool it is and how valuable it is. There's like a lot of art and science that goes into being an actual good salesperson. It doesn't just happen. It happens for some people, but like Grant truly loves sales. Like he's a salesperson.
Right.
And I was in sales for most of my career. I never loved sales. I always hated it. And I think that's just a thing. You can maybe get by just talking to customers if you're like have a good rapport and all that stuff. But I think a truly good sales rep just is a different skill set and a different type of brain and a different type of person.
You're also in onboarding, you get to show them value that they've already been convinced is real. That's easy to do. I'm just convinced. I'm not even convincing you of anything. I'm just basically validating what you've already been led to believe.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. People have asked me occasionally, oh, what made you want to do software sales? Like, how did you get into it? And nothing made me want to do it. Like, it wasn't like I'm super passionate about sales and I love software. It was like, I have a lifestyle that I want to live, and a lot of that has to do with work-life balance. I guess I got to get good at this and practice this. And that was just, and I have grown to really enjoy it because I feel like the challenges are things that I've gotten better at, some of those things that I was not good at early. And so it's, very fulfilling in that way. And so it's become fun to me, but definitely wasn't fun at the beginning.
What's your least favorite thing about sales?
My least favorite thing about sales, I love every aspect of it.
There's no way. There's just no way.
No, I think my least favorite thing about sales is probably the lack of control. Like in every scenario, when all is said and done, I have no power to close these deals. Like it is the buyer And oftentimes people that I'm not even connected to, not even talking to, who are influencing this deal. And it always feels like it's at an arm's length. And all that I can control is like the probability that it will close. But whether it actually closes or not is completely out of my control. And that'll drive you crazy.
And you feel that after every call. That's an interesting.
I don't feel it after every call, but I feel it anytime I'm thinking about metrics and like a quota, especially. And it's made 1,000 times worse if you have a quota that's unachievable, or a quota that feels very hard to attain, or a team that isn't like understanding about the realisticness of the quota that you set. It's like day to day, I don't necessarily feel it, but it's when you're talking about, okay, I've got to find 100 more K in this next week to close. There's some things I can do to increase the probability that some of these deals in pipeline might close, but I can't just make them close. It's so frustrating. Yeah, sales is good. Sales, it can be awesome if you're at the right company with the right product. It makes all the difference in the world. There's a lot of people who I talk to, they're like, oh, I tried sales, I could never do it. I'm like, yeah, you probably had a crappy company or culture or experience or product. You could absolutely do it if you were at a company like I'm at now, is how I feel a lot of time.
Yeah. Sherelle, what do you hate most about customer success and onboarding?
What I really hate is when customers churn and they don't give you a real reason, especially when you're trying and you're putting in effort and you think you're doing the right things and you're iterating on your processes and you're like, just give me some real feedback. And they'll say things like, you have a great product and you're a great team, just didn't work out. And it's why, because we're trying to really learn, both at Arrows, but at other places. So that's frustrating. And then the second thing is, and this is usually the onboarding team's response, not usually, this is 100% the onboarding team's responsibility to own and to convey. But when other departments don't understand your day-to-day or your job or the value you're providing, and then you become this reactive transactional motion of just do X number of calls or do X number of email check-ins. And it becomes very, robotic, because there is a lack of understanding of what is the value you're actually providing. And like I said, that's on you to normally be able to share and convey. But I've worked at places where when I try that and it's just not received at all, or there's just no care from executives on that topic, it's just hard. It's hard to stay motivated when you're already feeling like you're in this daily grind of keeping up with phone calls, keeping up with emails, keeping up with customer check-ins. So those two things grind my gears a bit.
Kim, what's your least favorite part about ops?
I don't know. I'm probably not going to have a good answer for that. I think maybe the toughest thing about ops is I'm so closely tied to your teams and your roles, and also there's an impact and I can help with things, and there's only so much I can do to help. So I think for me right now at this stage too, I'm really keeping such a close eye on like everyone's metrics, everyone's goals, how we're pacing toward them, all of that. And I feel bad a lot that I don't have a metric that it's like, if I do this and hit this goal, then our team will be successful. It's like a broad general thing. And that feels bad sometimes, just because I think a big part of my role is supporting and lifting up each of the individual teams to help us reach our go-to-market goals, or customer team goals, we call it. And yeah, I don't know. It's a thing I'm still working out.
Yeah, that would be hard.
Yeah.
It feels good to be able to look at a number and be like, I'm doing a great job. It also feels bad to look at a number and say, I'm not doing a great job.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, this is my first time in operations. I absolutely love it. It's so fun. But that's just a thing that I just generally feel bad about.
Yeah.
Wow, this was like really therapy, guys. At the end, right?
I told you guys, I didn't know what I signed up for.
We know.
Real therapy. And so that's what I got out of it.